It's coming through all right. There it is. I hear it now. We're going to be back in Judges this evening, Judges for a few more weeks. As I told you last week, one of my favorite books, facetiously. One of my, if you can have a least favorite, it seems okay to say you've got a favorite book or a favorite passage, but when you start to say I've got a least favorite book or a least favorite passage, that doesn't sound as good, does it? So I won't say that. But Judges is a very interesting literary and historical book. It's just a rough one. It's very dark, very violent. In fact, I thought it appropriate that we attach a warning to tonight's study. We'll be doing chapters 3, 4, and 5. So I've rated this Bible study MA, and reader discretion is advised, because there are a couple of very violent scenes in this. If you have never read through the book of Judges and don't know what's coming, there's some very, very interesting depictions, to say the least. Quick review, chapters 1 and 2 provided us with what we called a double introduction, where we come to understand the problem within a military context, that they did not conquer the nations they were supposed to conquer. They didn't do what they were supposed to do in a military sense. But then the second chapter, the second part of that double introduction, gives us a spiritual context there. The problem with not doing those things was that now they're going to worship gods other than Yahweh. So basically, the Lord, we went back to Deuteronomy chapter 7, the Lord gave Moses very specific instructions that Joshua then reiterated even upon his deathbed, that they were to clear the land of Canaan, the promised land that had been promised to Abraham. They were to clear that land of its inhabitants. But after those leaders passed away, we were told that the Israelites did not do what they were supposed to do. It's not that big a deal. We've got control of the land. That's enough. We don't have to drive everybody out or kill everybody. We've got enough control that we'll be able to manage this. And so they didn't do what they were supposed to do, and what God said would happen, happened. They began to intermarry among those tribes or those other nations, and they began to worship other gods. So Israel had moved into the promised land and received their tribal allotments, but they did not completely rid the land of the other people. I tried to do my best to do a little bit of a map. This can be a very complex map, but here is the 12 tribes that got physical, geographical allotments. This is the lands that they fell in. And I think I'll keep coming back to this map just to give us a sense of where the enemy is coming in and where the judge comes from. I'll do the best I can. We don't always know, but we talked through each of these, and Judah, if you remember, did an okay job. Everybody else did very poorly, just one after another. They did not drive out the whateverites from their area, and it goes on to the next tribe, and they didn't do it the same. And then you get all the way down to Dan, and Dan failed completely. And actually, you'll see during the book of Judges, the tribe of Dan actually migrate to the north, to the city that becomes Dan, north of the Sea of Galilee there. So you'll see that the Philistines give them such havoc that they actually end up moving by the end of the book of Judges. And so this was the tribal allotments that they got, but they did not completely rid the lands of the other people, which means they didn't get rid of the worship of the other gods. That was ultimately the problem. And so we turn into Judges chapter 3, continuing that double introduction, kind of concluding that double introduction. Now, these are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel by them. That is, all in Israel who had not experienced all the wars in Canaan. It was only in order that the generations of the people of Israel might know war, to teach war to those who had not known it before. These are the nations, the 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites who lived on Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon as far as Lebo Hamath. They were for the testing of Israel, to know whether Israel would obey the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. So the people of Israel lived among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And their daughters they took to themselves for wives, and their own daughters they gave to their sons, and they served their gods. So they are kind of, just as a good summary of everything we read last week, they didn't do what they were supposed to do by driving these out, and as a result, they're living among them. God is now going to use them to constantly test Israel, almost generation after generation. I think that's interesting that said the generations that don't know war will now know war. God will use them to oppress his own people so that they might turn back to him. So basically, exactly what God said would happen has happened. They began to intermarry with these people, and that was a problem, not because it was interracial. People have used this to ban interracial marriage before. That's not the problem. It was interreligious. It brought them to a different kind of worship, a different worship of a different God, and a service of other gods, and that is the problem. And so thus begins the cycle in Judges. We saw this last week introduced, and we'll see it a few times today. This is the repeated cycle that we're going to visit again and again. Israel does evil in the sight of the Lord. What does that usually mean? That's idolatry. It's they have turned to the worship of the Baals and the Ashereth and all those other gods of the land of Canaan. As a result, the Lord allows them to be oppressed, often by these nations that we've seen, or even today we'll see some outside nations come in, and God allows them to oppress his people. And then that leads to step 3. Israel cries out to the Lord and said, whoops, we're sorry. We shouldn't have been worshiping these gods. Please forgive us. Please save us. Number 4, the Lord raises up a deliverer. What word is used for deliverer? Judge. And so when we talk about a judge, that's what a judge is. It's not a courtroom type judge. That could have been one of their roles, and it might be part of the scope of that word, but really what it means is one who comes in and judges those oppressors and delivers Israel as a result. 5th step, the oppression is subdued. God is usually with that judge, and that judge is able to subdue that oppression. And then that leads to Israel living at peace for X number of years. That's almost always part of the formula. And this is the cycle you'll see within each of the stories tonight, and then again in the weeks to come as we meet various judges or deliverers that God uses to save Israel. So we'll continue to see this cycle as we meet these people. You'll notice, as I said last week, things getting progressively worse. Both in terms of the sin and the oppression, but also in the lives of the judges. And so really, cycle is one thing you could call this, but it feels more like a downward spiral. It feels like Israel's continuing to go down and downward and downward. We'll do our best to pull some application out of these stories, but I'm going to be honest with you. Many of them are pointing at the very similar ideas we've already reviewed. Judges can be a hard one to pull application out of. There's a couple of stories I get application from tonight. But we can point to these same principles, these same ideas that we've already seen of trusting God with our obedience. That's a huge one. That full obedience is what obedience really is. What we saw last week is partial obedience is not obedience. Disobedience. If they had done what God told them to do in the first place, they wouldn't have been in this problem. And so we're going to continue to see that theme. Second big theme we'll continue to see is the slippery slope of idolatry. It starts a little bit. It's not that big deal if we just combine these things, but before you know it, you're worshiping something other than God. In all of that, though, God remains faithful, which I think is another big application. God's faithfulness through all of the ups and downs that they have, mostly downs in the book of Judges. All right, any comments from last week or this quick review? Are you excited to jump in? No? Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I'm excited to get through it. All right, let's start verse 7 then. We meet our first judge. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asheroth. Therefore the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them into the land of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the people of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the people of Israel who saved them, Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war, and the Lord gave Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand. And his hand prevailed over Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. Now, if you remember, in chapter 1, we already met Othniel as a hero from the tribe of Judah. And we heard a little bit of his story there of how he got the land that he got. Here, God uses him to deliver the whole nation of Israel. This is one of the shorter stories. I mean, here soon, even tonight, we're going to meet a minor judge when we really only have about a sentence worth of story. But this is a relatively small story compared to the other major judges. But it does give us a chance to get used to the cycle because it gives us a really compact story that shows all the elements of the cycle, doesn't it? Number one, what happened first? What is always the beginning of the cycle? Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They sinned. They turned to idols, the worship of other gods. And so step two is always God uses some other nation to oppress them. In this case, literally it is Aram Naharahim. And some of your translations might actually say that. So if we go back to our map, the ESV actually goes ahead and translates that for us as Mesopotamia. And so what Aram Naharahim actually means is literally northwest Mesopotamia. So it was coming up from where it means the land of two rivers. So the Tigris and Euphrates. That king came down and attacked all of Israel. As a result, step number 3, Israel cries out to the Lord. And the Lord raises up a judge, a deliverer. In this case, it's Othniel, a man that, like I said, we met last week in the tribe of Judah, as he would be. Let's see, it'd be Caleb's younger brother. So Caleb's nephew, right? The son of, or was he Caleb's? Was he the son of Caleb's younger brother? Somebody look it up. Yes, yeah. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. So it'd be Caleb's nephew, Caleb that was the spy. And if you remember, he married Caleb's daughter, I think, granddaughter, and was given the land and a prize. So God raises him up and uses him. As a result, the oppression is subdued, and Israel lives at peace for 40 years, we're told. Then Othniel dies. Any questions or comments on this first judge that we meet? Like I said, it almost feels like it's there just so we can get used to the cycle of the judges. But for the most part, Othniel is a commendable man, with somebody you could see how God would use them. But the weeks are coming when it gets a little more sketchy. All right, no comments on Othniel? Let's move on to Ehud. Verse 12, a little longer story now. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He gathered to himself the Ammonites and the Amalekites and went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years. And so presumably 40 years later, after the passing of Othniel, it said that there was peace in the land. And so at least after his judgeship, we're not sure it was exactly 40 years. Like I said, there's probably some overlap here. There's probably some accordion style come and go. And there's no guarantee it was 40 years, but we'll say it's about a generation later, if not more. Say that again? 40 years, right. 40 years after Othniel. So the land had rest for 40 years back in verse 11. And now it says 18 years. And so this will be after 18 years of service. Yes, 40 years of peace, 18 years of oppression. Yeah, sorry about that, Joe. Is that what you were trying to clarify? Okay. So this time, God uses a country. Israel's back to their old ways. They fall into the same trap. They begin to worship other gods. This time, God uses a country to the south to punish them. If we bring up the map again, Moab is just to the south of Reuben there, the tribe of Reuben's area. And King Eglon of Moab recruits the Ammonites and the Amalekites, a couple of his neighbors, to say, hey, let's attack Israel together, and becomes to lead them, and they're oppressed for 18 years. Then what happens? Without looking ahead, what's always next in the cycle? Yeah, they cry out. That's next. Not the deliverer yet. The deliverer comes as a result of them crying out, right? So they're going to cry out to the Lord. Verse 15. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. The people of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, king of Moab. And Ehud made for himself a sword with two edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his clothes. Oh, we got something coming up, don't we? Let's stop and talk about Ehud first. Just like before, the people cry out for help to the Lord, and he listens. And he raises up a man named Ehud. All we know about him from the tribe of Benjamin, if we put him on the map, there's Moab and the Ammonites and the Amalekites, and then Ehud would have been in the tribe of Benjamin. And this is where they're going to have a conflict, right there around the north side of the Dead Sea there. That's where the battle is going to end up being after this is all said and done. We're told that he's left-handed. A lot of people have theorized why that might be worthy of note. And it probably just meant he was skillful with his left hand. It didn't necessarily mean he was left-handed like we would think that was his dominant hand, but he was at least really good with it. There's a couple reasons it might be noted. Number one, anybody know what Benjamin literally means? The name Benjamin in Hebrew literally means son of the right hand. So it might be an interesting note by the author to say, oh, by the way, this son of the right hand was actually left-handed. Just kind of noting an interesting thing there. It could also be, some scholars noted that because he was proficient with his left hand, he could actually hide his sword on his right thigh where he wouldn't have been, searched. And so that's going to come into play very soon. Going to be less suspicious with this plan that he has. This sword that he's crafted, it says it's a cubit long, but it's slightly different than the word usually used for cubit. And so if it is a standard cubit, and there's some disagreement on this, a standard cubit would be about 18-inch sword, which you could see him hiding, even though that would be kind of difficult. But it could also mean a slight variation of that scholars think is about 2/3 of that, which would be about a foot long for us. So either way, we're going to classify that as a dagger. And so he's got a dagger, and he straps this dagger to his right thigh, and he takes tribute to Eglon, to praise Eglon, their leader. Verse 17. All right, this is where the rating, if we're coming back from commercial break, comes back on, and we say, I remind you, this is somewhat violent and gory. And he presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. And when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute. But he himself turned back at the idols near Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. Yeah, he did, didn't he? And he commanded silence, and all his attendants went out from his presence. And Ehud came to him as he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber. And Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he rose from his seat, and Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not pull out the sword out of his belly, and the dung came out. Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. So usually this is the portion where I go over the details of the story we just read. I don't really want to go over these details that much. Hopefully none of this is where you determine the Holy Spirit is leading you to make some application. So what we see is Eglon was a fat king. What does that say about a king of this day? Wealthy, but that it probably meant he was even beyond wealthy. He was corrupt. He was narcissistic. He was all about himself. It's not like getting fat today. You had to really try at that point. So took advantage of his people. It does say something about the evil that he was. Ehud delivers the tribute, but then comes back with a secret message. Stab the king, and then we're not sure of the words here. Either his intestines come out or their contents. The word could probably mean either thing. Either way, it's pretty gross. And he escapes through the porch, and that's another word that we're not sure what it means. Anybody have NLT on them tonight? Latrine. And so a lot of scholars think that that's where Eglon was. He was in a private room that included a place where he could relieve himself, as you'll see in the coming parts here, probably why they're theorizing that these guards are waiting outside. And it's possible that that's how Ehud escaped, crawling through that and getting out of the palace. And he locks the king in as he goes. So verse 24, we pick up the story. When he had gone, the servants came in, and when they saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. And not to be crass, but the smell probably led them to that conclusion as well, if you think about what just happened. And they waited there till they were embarrassed. But when he still did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and they opened them, and there lay the Lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the idols and escaped to Serah. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim. Then the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him, and they seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites, and did not allow anyone to pass over. And they killed at that time about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. So thus is the story of the judge Ehud. Ehud shows incredible bravery here, shows incredible cunning with his assassination of Eglon. Then he leads the army to battle, and he leaves victorious. All of Israel leaves victorious, and as a result, God has delivered them once again. Israel experiences peace for 80 years, it says, as a result. The land had rest for 80 years. Any comments on Ehud or Eglon? So the way I read this, and again, whenever you're reading either Hebrew or Greek, the way they count is always slightly different, so we're never quite sure. But if you go back to Othniel, verse 11 says, let me get back to verse 11. Good grief, that was a long time ago. So the land had rest 40 years. Then Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. We don't know if that's actually chronological or if 40 years was the entirety of the peace that they experienced. So the end of the reign of Mesopotamia on them, 40 years of peace, and then Moab comes. Is that what it means? Not sure. Or you can read it as 40 years of peace, then Othniel died, and then it happened. And I'm just going to be honest too, and several scholars said this, whenever you see these kind of very round numbers, it's probably just telling you, a vague period of time anyway. Something like we would say a century. I could say, such and such lived a century, and you would know that didn't mean exactly 100 years to the second. It could just be an estimate. You see 40 years, and now you see 80 years, so you almost kind of see that same idea. Good question. Any other thoughts on this story?
A lot of times in the Old Testament, you'll see the protagonist here, this guy, he has a more lesson going in.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't tell us that. It says he just sort of takes the bull by the horn and does it. And God must have left him because if they killed 10,000 people.
So help me out. Did it never say that the Lord was upon him, or? Yeah, but I think he lied about that. I think I got your message right here.
Verse 15, it does say there that the Lord raised up a deliverer.
It does credit the Lord, yes, giving that. Now, it doesn't say what it said about Othniel. I'll give you that. that the Spirit of the Lord was upon him. But yeah, the hand of the Lord is going to be on each of these guys, even as they get progressively worse, for sure. But there it does seem to be some sort of taking it into his own hands here, it feels like, yeah.
My Bible says the Israelites cried out, and the Lord gave them the liver he had.
Yep. So yeah, definitely, it's going to attribute all these guys to the Lord. That's the whole idea here. As Israel cries out, the Lord, raises up somebody to be their deliverer. Yeah, Richard.
My study Bible showed it as a cycle. I mean, they fall away from the Lord and they cry to the Lord.
Yep.
And they're
We're going to see it at least one more time tonight, Richard. Yep.
They're in
Yep.
like a servitude, and the servitude was longer the second time.
Yeah, it kind of goes back and forth, as you'll see, but it definitely gets worse and worse. So that's why I've kind of called it a downward spiral as well. Any other questions or thoughts on Ehud, the Moabites, or Eglon, or hopefully nothing about ancient Near Eastern architecture? I can't exactly answer what was happening there. All right, so in verse 31, we have a bit of a side note, and we'll meet 6 of these guys in total, what a lot of scholars will call minor judges. We really only get a sentence on each of them, maybe a little bit more. We don't get the full story, so let's read verse 31 here. After him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, who killed 600 of the Philistines with an ox goad, and he also saved Israel. So we know very little about Shamgar. This is just a quick note. We know his name is not Hebrew, which has led some scholars to believe that it's possible maybe he was a son of one of these mixed marriages, and God actually used him to save the Israelites from the Philistines in this case. There's been lots of speculation why his name isn't a Hebrew name. You see the map there? He fought, we don't know where he was from, what tribe he was from, so I just kind of put him in the middle. And he fought against the Philistines, Philistia. And so that is a group of people that, as you guys know, will continue to pop up and give Israel all kinds of issues. So this is not the last you will see of the Philistines. He killed 600, it says, with an ox goad. An ox goad, they believe, would have been something that to prompt your ox as you're driving oxen. So it would have been a 6 to 8 foot shaft with some sort of spike either pointing in the same direction as the shaft or maybe perpendicular to the shaft. And that was the weapon he used. Clearly a farmer's tool. And I think that's part of the note here, is that this guy was an incredible warrior, presumably because of the strength of God. That God gave him to push back the Philistines, that he was able to use a farming implement to take out 600. Any other thoughts on Shamgar? Anybody have any grandkids named Shamgar? No.
Stories of like Samson, the lion.
Yeah, yep, Samson, yep, you'll have that, and he's dealing with Philistines too. Some scholars even think maybe this story has been conflated a little bit with Samson, and maybe this was a separate note because it sounds so much like Samson that some people think that might be some sort of crossover. I don't know that it has to be. I think that it's just a sample of a lot of the stuff that was going on in this period. All right, on to a more well-known judge and a little bit longer of a story. What do you say we start the cycle all over again? Chapter 4, verse 1. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. So notice it completely skips over Shamgar there, but you'll notice later in chapter 5 there's a reference to Shamgar. So validate it however you feel comfortable here. Try to draw out the chronology. Verse 2, and the Lord sold them. I want to stop there because I always thought that was an interesting word. Sold. He bought them from the Egyptians, right? Bought them from the Egyptians, and now he's sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Haggayim. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. So once again, we begin the cycle again. Israel returned to evil in the sight of the Lord, which always means idolatry in Judges. They were turning to the gods of the Canaanites instead of worshiping and serving only him. This time we head back up to the north with Jabin, who's called the king of Canaan. So if we go all the way north, Hazor, where he reigned there, was north of what we know of as the Sea of Galilee. And so that would have been where he was located. And he's called the king of Canaan. Now, Canaan, and throughout Judges, throughout actually Joshua as well, can refer to specific Canaanites or the whole region. In this case, it is this group located to the north of what we would, or in the area we would think of as Galilee. Not only is the king noted this time, in Moab only the king was noted, but this time he had an incredibly sharp strategic general named Sisera. And so the story makes note of him as general as well. The people cried out after 20 years of oppression, and they were noticing Sisera's army was pretty strong. It notes that he had 900 chariots. That doesn't mean that's all he had. He also had plenty of foot troops as well. It's just the fact, imagine going up to, that's essentially today, like a tank. He had 900 tanks along with his infantry as well. No wonder Israel was scared to death, and it took them 20 years of oppression to finally cry out to the Lord because they were scared. They didn't want to go up against this guy without the Lord's help by any means. All right, verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kedesh Naphtali, and said to him, "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun, and I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand." So Israel cries out once again, just continuing that cycle, right? And they cry out because of the strength of King Jabin and General Sisera in Canaan. And they're like, there's no way we can overcome this. We're being oppressed. God, you've got to help us. And so God this time works through Deborah. We find Deborah down in the hill country of Ephraim. It says at the time she was judging Israel, and it calls her a prophetess. As a result of kind of those dual titles, there's some disagreement on exactly who should be called a judge in this story, on whether or not Deborah was the judge or Barak ends up being the judge. She goes to Barak and kind of calls him out. But we still don't know, is she the judge or is she just a prophetess? Or some scholars would even say she was both, which would remind you, who else was a judge and a prophet? It was the last of the judges, Samuel. Samuel served as both a judge and a prophet. And so some folks have said, hey, she could have been both. There's no reason we can't have multiple judges here, so maybe Barak is considered a deliverer as well. And so it really depends on which way you want to lean. I'm giving you the choice, great Hebrew scholars that you are, whether or not Deborah should be considered the judge or Barak, or maybe both. If she isn't the judge, clearly Barak is the one that God has raised up as a deliverer. We don't have that exact language, but we do have both of these figures doing what judges usually do. So either way, Deborah is a woman of great faith, great wisdom, great courage. And Barak is apparently a man of great influence, but is unwilling to step up. She calls him out and wonders why he hasn't listened to the Lord. And so you see some of her prophet call there. She goes to Barak and she says, I know what God has called you to do, and you're not doing it. I mean, that's quite the call out, isn't it? But she's right. Barak doesn't push back, and He hasn't listened to the Lord. He hasn't gathered troops from Naphtali and Zebulun. You see right there the two tribes that are right there local to this opposition. He hasn't done what he's supposed to do. God has said that he would deliver them, but Barak has not followed up. And so here's Barak's response to Deborah, verse 8. Barak said to her, "Well, if you'll go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go." And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went up with him. And so what we see here, apparently Barak does not have the faith of Deborah. She agrees to go with him, but did you notice that warning? Because of your lack of faith, the glory isn't going to go to you. It's going to go to a woman. And the first time you read this story, you think, oh yeah, Deborah's going to end this. And that's not the case, as you'll see. So like I said, Barak's still a great general, just was lacking in faith. He gathers 10,000 men and he heads into battle. Verse 11. Yes, I'm sorry. I'll stop there.
Traditionally, women did not go in battle.
They did not, but he, for some reason, had more faith if Deborah was with him. Yep. He might have acknowledged that God was with her more than he felt like God was with him. I mean, you see that a lot in leaders as if we use this as a leadership lesson. A lot of leaders fear, going out there alone, so they want somebody to come with them. There's a lot of them, yeah, absolutely. I feel like Deborah is the judge here. I mean, if you're looking for my opinion, I feel like Deborah is the judge, and I think that's traditionally how we've read this, but the text would allow for either. It does feel a little like both, the way she's talking to Barak, yeah. Or maybe she's just judging in a different way. She's not as violent as the others. She's putting generals to work.
She's actually starting everything, getting it moving.
Right, yeah.
She's telling them this is it.
Yep. All right, verse 11, we have a quick side note. Now, Heber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak in Zananim, which is near Kadesh. Now, that detail is going to come into play later. You might wonder, okay, who cares? But that's going to come up a little later. So back to the battle in verse 12. When Sisera was told that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him, from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, "Up, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you?" So just pausing right there, I'm with you, Joe. You kind of see Deborah more as this kind of almost like a spiritual leader, just saying, hey, the Lord is before you, go. And so you can see she's definitely fulfilling the role of prophetess here. Whether or not she's the judge is a question. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him, and the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot. And Barak pursued the chariots and the army to Harosheth Hagoyim. And all of the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. And so this was an absolutely incredible victory. Don't just read over the fact that, yes, they had 10,000 men, but the other side probably had close to that many as well. Plus what? 900 chariots. This was an incredible victory. This was nothing to sneeze at, and you can kind of see why Barak was afraid, but you can also see why he shouldn't have been. The Lord gave this army over to them. A complete rout. Not a soldier was left. In fact, there's only one person in the whole army left. Who is it? The commander, Sisera. Verse 17. Oh, yep, go ahead. Okay.
Here they are, here's Deborah, and verse 14 is Barak. Get ready.
Mm-hmm. That's what ESV translated as up. Yeah, exactly. It's get on it, Barak. Come on. Verse 17, but Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of the guy we met earlier, Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin and the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael, so he thought he was in friendly territory, right? Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, do not be afraid. So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the opening of the tent, and if any man comes and asks you, is anyone here? Say no. But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand. Then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was laying fast asleep from weariness. So he died, just in case you were wondering. Verse 22, and behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, come, I will show you the man whom you are seeking. So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead, with the tent peg in his temple. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. And the hand of the people of Israel pressed harder and harder against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. So as Deborah predicted, the general of the Canaanite army was killed not by a general, was not killed by Barak. He wasn't killed by a soldier. He wasn't even killed by a judge, although I guess you could make the case that Jael might be the judge, right? It was killed by another woman, just like Deborah said, that the credit is going to go to a woman, not you as general. Because you did not trust the Lord, the credit is going to go somewhere else, and you will not get the glory that every general desires. Any comments before we go to chapter 5, which is a ballad that is going to recount these events for us? Yes, but I don't think we can fast forward and look at this as a pattern for women in the church, but I think it is a pattern for women in government. There's no reason for women not to lead. Women are great leaders, as we see here. Deborah inspired more than anybody else that looked at Barak and said, hey, let's go, up. Let's go. Today is the day that God is going to hand this army to you. So she didn't take charge of the army, but she was clearly in leadership role here. Yeah, it does. It does. Well, that's what I mean. Judges is a great literary work. It really is. It's just a weird Bible book. You got tent pegs and dung. Would you say? Who, Jael? No. And clearly, that's why if the hero of the story is Jael, right? She recognizes somehow who this guy is. Maybe he announced himself. She recognizes that, that what God would want her to do in this case. It really is incredible what she did. Yeah. And was creative. Yeah. Kind of took the implements at hand. Okay, so chapter 5 is a ballad about these events. I want to read this from New Living, if that's okay with you guys, just a little easier to read aloud. And I've read a lot of hard names tonight, and my tongue hurts. So I wouldn't mind reading from New Living Translation a little. And so I'm going to read all of this, but I want you to look for a few themes here. Number 1, trusting the Lord's work and not our own. You're going to see the author, presumably Deborah, maybe Barak. They're kind of given credit for this song. Maybe it's a song that somebody wrote about them. Whoever it is writing this, they're giving the credit to the Lord. Thanks to God for his work as another theme. Thank you for what you've done, God. A third theme is the need for courageous leadership. As leaders are praised for doing what they needed to do. And then finally, the need for everyone to step up and do their part. You're going to see a couple of tribes called out here for not helping in this battle. So let's read all of Judges 5 here. Again, this is from NLT. On that day, Deborah and Barak, son of Abinoam, sang this song. I'm not going to sing for you, sorry. Israel's leaders took charge, and the people gladly followed. Praise the Lord. Listen, you kings. Pay attention, you mighty rulers, for I will sing to the Lord. I will make music to the Lord, the God of Israel. Lord, when you set out from Seir and marched across the fields of Edom, the earth trembled, and the cloudy skies poured down rain. The mountains quaked in the presence of the Lord, the God of Mount Sinai, in the presence of the Lord, the God of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, and in the days of Jael, people avoided the main roads, and travelers stayed on winding pathways. There were few people left in the villages of Israel until Deborah arose as a mother for Israel. When Israel chose new gods, war erupted at the city gates, yet not a shield or spear could be seen among 40,000 warriors in Israel. My heart is with the commanders of Israel, with those who volunteered for war. Praise the Lord. Consider this, you who ride on fine donkeys, you who sit on fancy saddle blankets, and you who walk along the road. Listen to the village musicians gathered at the watering holes. They recount the righteous victories of the Lord and the victories of his villagers in Israel. Then the people of the Lord marched down to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah, wake up, wake up, wake up, and sing a song. Arise, Barak, lead your captives away, son of Abinoam. Down from Tabor marched the few against the nobles. The people of the Lord marched down against mighty warriors. They came down from Ephraim, a land that once belonged to the Amalekites. They followed you, Benjamin, with your troops. From Machir, the commanders marched down. From Zebulun, came those who carry a commander's staff. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah and Barak. They followed Barak, rushing into the valley. But in the tribe of Reuben, there was great indecision. Why did you sit at home among the sheepfolds to hear the shepherds whistle for their flocks? Yes, in the tribe of Reuben, there was great indecision. Gilead remained east of the Jordan. And why did Dan stay home? Asher sat unmoved at the seashore, remaining in his harbors. But Zebulun risked his life, as did Naphtali on the heights of the battlefield. The kings of Canaan came and fought at Tanakh near Megiddow's springs. But they carried off no silver treasures. The stars fought from heaven. The stars in their orbits fought against Sisera. The Kishon River swept them away, that ancient torrent, the Kishon. March on with courage, my soul. Then the horses' hooves hammered the ground, the galloping of Sisera's mighty steeds. Let the people of Meroz be cursed, said the angel of the Lord. Let them be utterly cursed, because they did not come out to help the Lord, to help against the mighty warriors. Most blessed among women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. May she be blessed among all in tents. Sisera asked her for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him yogurt. Then with her left hand she reached for a tent peg, and with her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera with the hammer, crushing his head. With a shattering blow she pierced his temples. He sank, he fell, he lay still at her feet. And where he sank, there he died. From the window, Sisera's mother looked out. Through the window she watched for his return, saying, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why don't we hear the sound of chariot wheels?" Her wise women answer, and she repeats those words to herself. They must be dividing the captured plunder, with a woman or two for every man. Oh, there will be colorful robes for Sisera, and colorful embroidered robes for me. Yes, the plunder will include colorful robes embroidered on both sides. Lord, may all your enemies die like Sisera. But may those who love you rise like the sun in all its power. Then there was peace in the land for 40 years. Interesting poem, isn't it? It's quite the epic little poem. It recounts the events and attributes all these successes to God. Like I said, some of those themes, it thanks God for what he's done. It acknowledges it was his work and not their own. But it also praises the leadership. It calls out those who contributed, and it calls out those who didn't contribute and say, hey, where were you guys? There might be a little bit of application for us even in the church today. You know, sometimes it is, hey, why aren't you jumping in here? We got a lot of work to do for the glory of the Lord. I love that it ends with this picture of Sisera's mother waiting, assuming she was in her palace waiting for more good stuff from her son. Gave the picture of almost constant victory of Sisera, and every time he comes back bringing all the spoils of war. And so they start to theorize what must be taking him so long. It must be that there's a lot to count. And then I love how the poem then points out, just that it's the irony of it all, that they're wrong. And ultimately it says, may all your enemies die like Sisera. After Deborah, there was peace in the land for 40 years. So you'll have to come back next week to see if that peace lasts. Any guesses? There might be a cycle involved. Let's do a few so whats. Feel free to add to my list. I think we see the continued importance of full obedience versus the slippery slope of idolatry. We're going to continue to see that here. I think in the story we just looked at, especially the lack of leadership courage in Barak, of the call out of why aren't you being obedient to the Lord? Deborah calling him out and saying, get your men, get to battle. Versus that slippery slope of idolatry. We kind of laugh about the cyclical nature of this, but that is the lesson from Judges here, that, hey, it starts with just a little bit. It's that old idiom of the frog in the boiling pot, right? It's just getting a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer, a little bit warmer, and it doesn't realize that before you know it, it's cooked. It's the same sort of thing that we see happening here. You wonder, how could Israel forget? The same way we do. It's a slippery slope. Second, so what I think for us, if we want to learn some lessons from this, is God can use anyone he wants. We've seen that throughout our Upside Down Kingdom series on Sunday, right? We don't get to say who God uses and who God doesn't, including ourselves sometimes, right? Sometimes we think we're worthy and God says no, and sometimes we don't think we're worthy. He says, get in the game. You see all of these happening in Judges. Othniel makes sense. Othniel seems like the kind of leader God would use. Did things the way they should be done, is seen as very reputable. Shamgar, we're not sure if he was even an Israelite. And then Jael, a humble tent-dwelling woman, otherwise no name, who has now been immortalized in a book we're reading 4,000 years later, roughly, because she was obedient to God. God can use anyone. And then finally, my biggest so what as I read through this, as much as I love the book of Judges, it does make me continue to look for that perfect deliverer. These all seem like imperfect deliverers. Every time we see the cycle continue, we see there's, the Israel falls back in. There's never a good solution. It's never an eternal solution. And so who is that perfect deliverer? Obviously, it's Jesus. And I want you to contrast the violence that we saw tonight. A couple of scenes of incredible violence that if we saw them portrayed, we'd be like, oh, really, you shouldn't show that. Just awful things. Contrast that with Jesus. He was not violent at all, and yet received that kind of violence. It is quite the twist, isn't it? When you look at these human deliverers are so violent, are so, have to push back the enemy. And I get it. That's what had to happen. But when God brings his perfect deliverer, his ultimate delivery was not accomplished through violence, but through sacrifice. It wasn't through the delivery of violence. It was through the receipt of violence. That's intriguing to me after such a violent lesson. And as we approach the crucifixion and the resurrection. So dwell on that. Any other so what's that you guys would add? Why does he remain faithful to us? Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I don't know if you guys get into that practice, but every time I ask myself that question, God, why do you keep putting up with these people? I always get the answer back, well, I put up with you. And it is a constant reminder that this cycle we see in Judges, maybe not to this extreme, but we all deal with this. Hopefully not to this extreme. Mike?
Interesting verse in chapter 5, we've seen as odd, but also could be a sign of the times too, because verse 8 says, when Israel chose new gods, war erupted. That was big gates. Yet not a shield or spear could be seen
Yet we're safe. We're not going to take up arms. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Never mind. I'm just not going to. Good. Tell him later. He'll tell it again later. It was pretty funny. I'll tell you after we're off the stream. Yeah. Anything else? If not, let's pray. God, we repent of times that we have been like these Israelites, forgetting what you've done for us and riding that slippery slope of idolatry. If we're going to get any personal application out of this, that's probably what it is. God, help us to turn from those idols. Help us to be obedient to you so that we don't fall into these traps. But God, when we do cry out to you, I don't know why. Like Val said, I don't know why you keep coming to our rescue. I don't know why you keep putting up with us. But we're thankful for it, God. And ultimately, Lord, we are thankful for the perfect Redeemer, the one that has changed our downward cycle and spiral into an upward spiral. Yes, we still struggle with this, but Jesus is continuing to change our hearts. The Holy Spirit is continuing to work in us. And God, you're growing us. Help us to continue to focus on that, to understand what you're doing in our lives, to look back on these horrible stories as something that you have saved us from and that you have delivered us from. And we praise you for it, just as Deborah did tonight. We praise you for your great works. It's in Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. All right. Come back next week to see if they break the cycle.